welcome to this week's Property Matters on Dublin South FM, the show that brings global trends to an Irish audience. You can contact us on Twitter at iPropertyRadio or by email at hello@iPropertyRadio.com. Your host for today is myself, Carol Tallon. Due to ongoing COVID-19 restrictions, we are still recording remotely, so my apologies for any poor sound quality. And so first up, I'm delighted to be joined on the line now with Tomás. McKeon, Tomás, my Irish pronunciation is terrible, but you're managing director of McKeon Group. So, Tomás, you're very welcome and thank you for joining us today.
No problem. Great to be here, Caroline. I think you did an excellent job on the name there, so thank you.
13 years or 14 years of learning Irish in school has not stood to me, but it's something that as an adult I'd like to improve. So, Tomás, as mentioned there, you're managing director with McKeon Group. So that's a name that will be synonymous within the construction industry here in Ireland. So look, you might just take a moment to maybe give an overview to the audience here about McKeon Group and what projects you're involved in at the moment.
Yeah, no problem, Carol. So I suppose McKeon Group has roots back to 1950 with my grandfather, and I suppose taken over by my father in the 70s, and I suppose it's grown into what it is today, which is a multidisciplinary contractor. So we have a construction division and McKeon division, and then we have a sister company here works, which is a technology division. So we've evolved over the years into
absolutely.
Different sectors.
Actually, in terms of having that expertise in-house, that's quite unusual, for most contractors would be bringing in, say, the McKeon or anything. So in terms of project expertise, you've quite a lot of that in-house?
Yeah, well, it gives us a lot of insights, and it gives customers a lot of comfort to know that we have that expertise in-house. So rather than having to reach out to subcontractors or indeed specialist subcontractors, where we literally just have to walk down the corridor to our colleagues in McKeon, and we're all sharing the one, common data environment, really, where we have access to all the contractual, the drawings and specifications as well. So there's no bottlenecks of information or indeed walls put in the way. So it has worked out.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Very well.
And in terms of the past few months, obviously there's been massive challenges in place for the industry. So in terms of McKeon Group projects, how have things been over the past 2 to 3 months?
Yeah, very challenging. I suppose we were very lucky in one way. We had the IT systems set up there to work remotely. So we were able to do pretty much everything remotely that we could do in the office. So we have a remote desktop set up there for all our accountancy staff and indeed our estimators. So that was a blessing. Obviously, we're an Office 365 house, so we were well used to using Teams. That said, I think there was a very quick digital transformation for some of us in McKeon Group, because we were just forced into use, full-blown use of the technology. So we were lucky there, but of course we had a complete shutdown. That proved very difficult. Trying to decide, I suppose a lot of time was spent at the start trying to figure out how we manage the wage subsidy scheme, how we keep people engaged, and again, as I say, our team were great at coming up with online training for particularly the site staff and the operatives, to keep them engaged. Obviously, the management team and the estimators were still flat out, but to make sure that everyone, I suppose, mentally was involved with something in the company, and just keeping in touch with colleagues. So so it was challenging, but as I say, we were very lucky. Now we did have 2 projects that we did some work on over the shutdown period. One was a social housing scheme, which we got dispensation for, or a request more so, to actually continue working on to finish out about 70 houses that will be leased to local authorities. We also had a medical device company that had they actually make coatings for implements that go inside the body. So that was deemed an essential site as well. So there was a little bit of traction there, and it kept some of our site teams
that's
involved.
very positive. But in terms of, like you mentioned there, that there was a huge shift towards digital transformation, and I know that had to happen right across the industry. And it's very clear at this stage that some companies adapt to that in a different way, or maybe had an easier time adapting to this. For the McKeon Group, certainly innovation is really in your DNA there. So maybe the transition wasn't quite as severe as it might have been for some of your industry peers. Now, I understand that you've just launched a new app called Good2Go. You might just talk us through that?
Yeah, so I mean, what you said there was that innovation is in our DNA, and that is very true. Luckily, and it's part of our culture, and it's one of our core values. Right from the 50s, when my grandfather used to make blocks and turn brush handles when there were shortages of them. But we actually have a team here called Innovation Boost internally in McKeon Group, and they would work on different problems. But they also seek to learn how to innovate, how to co-create, and then instill that culture in the rest of the organization. So Good2Go came about, I suppose, early on in the COVID-19 lockdown, when we were kind of figuring, well, actually, what does the future hold for construction sites? How will we return to work? And obviously, particularly that medical device company I mentioned, we knew that was going to happen early, so we had to be ready for going back to site there. I suppose I was involved in some of the conversations, but it was mainly our health and safety team, I suppose, led by Kleena and Veronica. And then we appointed, I suppose, a COVID-19 coordinator, Carmel Mooney, to assist with, all the procedures and PPE that was going to be required. And during the course of the conversation, we were trying to figure out how would we actually sign people in and out to sites. And it was simple things like, we can't use the standard login book because you don't want to be sharing pens. Where does all this information go? What if someone does answer yes to one of the critical COVID-19 questions? How can we keep that information safe? How can we prevent that? The repetitiveness of, if people are going to different sites, that we can keep all this information centrally. So it started off as an Excel sheet, and then we figured the impracticalities of that and how to share it and how to make it very easy for our new, I suppose, COVID-19 doormen, as we call our door people, as we call them, who are going to actually have to ask everyone that arrives at site, whether it's myself or whether it's the client or whether it's an operative, has your circumstances changed in relation to COVID-19? So somebody, and I can't remember who in the group, came up with the idea of, could we make this an online form? So we created a Microsoft form, which basically asks all the questions. So if it's Carol, she's coming to site, has she been in contact with anyone with COVID-19? But it also ticks the boxes in terms of, actually, tell me your next of kin. So if we do have an emergency, who do we contact? It also takes reference of your CAF induction card, the new COVID-19.
And that's so
CAF
important
induction.
Because obviously nobody can access the site without that.
Absolutely. So we asked all that in the form. So we got all this information. And then what really happened was this was being dumped into our SharePoint site. And we were like, really now, how do we share this information with sites? And we thought about Power Apps, which is a part of Office 365, and I suppose yours truly took it upon himself to try and do something very quickly. And with the help of the whole team, we did it. And within a day and a half, we had a working app.
And that's all in-house?
All in-house. So we... and the app, for example, will actually has a barcode scanner on it. It'll scan your CAF induction card, verify that it's you. So a picture pops up that it's you within the app. We expanded it then to take into account your SafePass number, any certs you have, training certs you have. So this then becomes a central register for any site. So typically, and this was something that we always got feedback from the site managers for, was, well, look at, Carol has been on one of our sites before. So she's filled out all this questionnaire, and now I'm having to do it again. But we always kind of struggle with how do we share this information in a safe way, compliant with GDPR, etc., and to make it easy. And this app now ticks all those boxes as well. So what started off with as a COVID-19 solution actually has more solutions than that. So now it's a simple app. You install it on your phone. And the doorman can use it, but also the site manager can use it for taking pictures of certs as they do site-specific inductions, and then they can upload to the app what sites they have been approved on. So I can see, if I'm a separate site manager that comes onto that site, I can see, yes, Carol actually has been inducted on this site. It's and the feedback's been excellent.
Well, look, I think it's an amazing responsive use of innovation, because sometimes the term innovation gets thrown around a lot, but one thing I've definitely noticed through our work with PropTech Ireland is that sometimes there's a perception that one company might be more innovative than another, or the culture of innovation isn't there. And I think it's really interesting that you use the words learning innovation, because sometimes that's something that's believed to be almost innate, and that's a bit of an excuse or a cop-out, because it sounds like it might be easier for one company rather than another. Whereas actually, if you're in the process of learning innovation and trial and error, it becomes part of the culture. So it becomes something that's adopted by companies. So, for example, and I don't know if you've seen this in the industry, but sometimes there's a perception that innovation is somehow linked with age, and I think that that's such a misnomer. And I think it maybe got confused because of the use of technology, whereas actually what we see very clearly is that where people have an innovative mindset at 18, they're still going to have it at 88, and that's just the reality there. And the construction industry is particularly resilient and particularly innovative. Like you mentioned, the challenges that your grandfather might have had and how he dealt with those. In fact, it's not very different to what you're doing today. It just, you have technology as an enabler.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it is. I mean, we are still very much learning innovation, but as well as that, people sometimes don't realize how innovative they are. A lot of people associate innovation with a product rather than a procedure or way of doing things. And I suppose, funny, I just only after sending an update today, we do a weekly update to all staff in relation to how we're getting on with COVID-19. And one of the questions I asked in relation to innovation is, why am I doing this? So next week, if you ask yourself, why am I actually doing this? Does it add value? And that question alone, or asking your colleague that question, and not so much in a smart way, the answers you get can sometimes go, actually, I don't actually need to do this. I can skip this step and do it a different way. So a lot of innovation certainly in our industry is just in relation to process. And not necessarily, people just get hung up. But sure, I don't design anything. I don't. But it's about how you do things.
That's such a great point, because actually one of the things we hammer home is that not all innovation is tech driven, but equally not all technology is innovative. And I think, in terms of what we're using now, there has been a huge element of novelty driven technology solutions over the past decade. And what we've really seen over the past 2.5 months is all of that has been stripped bare. So now suddenly it's not novelty, but necessity driven. Technology is being used. So whether it was Microsoft Teams or Zoom or whatever team group chat you're using, these were things that were handy up to 2.5 months ago, whereas now they're vital. And I think that's a shift that might have taken an awful lot longer, to make if we hadn't been thrust into this chaos and the dealing with the impact of the pandemic, in order to keep businesses going. Tomás, one of the most impressive things about the Good2Go app, and by the way, just for listeners who want to find that, it's good and the number 2, Good2Go. And I think there's a link to that on your website, McKeon.ie. But one of the most impressive things to me about this is that now that you've developed this, rolled it out on your own sites, and you're benefiting from the the productivity gain and the ease of use, you're now making this available for free to the industry?
Yeah, absolutely. So anyone who's interested, as you say, you can go to McKeon.ie and you'll find details there. But we've actually partnered with MJ Flood to export it. Because there's a bit involved in actually exporting it and importing it. So MJ Flood, our IT partners here, so we reached out to them and said, look, would you be interested? We'd like to offer this for free to external. And they said, yeah, no, that'd be great. We'd love to get involved. So I suppose what struck me over the last few months, and I've spoken to a lot of my colleagues, competitors, many of them, and everyone has been so open through this. This is how we're doing things. Have you seen this? Have you tried this? This is how, this is what we did, and this is what failed. And that openness, I just thought was absolutely excellent. And I suppose on the back of that, we said, well, look at what can we do to help the industry and our peers.
Yeah, I think this is an amazing thing to do, and I hope that contractors actually take advantage of this and gain the same benefits as well, because it's really important. Look, one of the things in terms of innovation, which clearly isn't a problem at McKeon Group, but one of the things with innovation is that there has to be a willingness to get things wrong, a willingness to fail, and a willingness to course correct. And the margins in construction historically have not really enabled that. There has to be a huge commitment towards it. So is that something, is that a shift that we're going to have to make in the industry going forward?
Yeah, I mean, look, especially I suppose we're from a family company, obviously, that have grown, and trying to get out of that idea of being able to control everything, even in itself is innovative, and you have to allow people to fail. In a controlled manner, of course, but you have to encourage it and then accept that there may be failures. I think the industry doesn't give itself enough credit at times, as you were saying earlier, in terms of how innovative it is. I suppose my fear at the moment is that given we've seen a not a downturn in work, but things being postponed and put off till next year, and indeed jobs cancelled. And my fear would be that the industry may fall back into that mode of buying work and of doing things below cost, and there we lose all the traction I think we've made in the last few months of actually learning from one another, and then suddenly gone into this panic mayhem of trying to pick up work everywhere. But hopefully we learned our lesson 10 years ago, and that won't happen, because I mean, to do work now requires a lot of professionalism, and particularly with the new control measures with COVID-19, it's not going to be cheap to do work.
Yeah, and look, I think that's a really important point, and it's not one that's come about as a result of the pandemic. This is something that certainly the CIF and other industry bodies have really been championing, change of procurement processes, so that there isn't this waiting in favor of low cost tendering. That there is a quality component there, and it's a really important aspect. But in terms of projects, I absolutely understand your fears there, because it's something that's come up on previous shows over the past 2 months. And what we're seeing is a strong indication from the private sector that we need to see in the public sector, that there will be a commitment to keep work, to keep on track with work, and particularly in terms of capital projects. The last thing we need is a slowdown on there, because we know now the impact of trying to recover from a lost decade of infrastructure. It's very expensive, it's very cumbersome, and it adds more challenges to the industry. So that's definitely a point I think that's been really well made by many industry bodies, and it's been made to government as well. So we want to see, I suppose we need to see some support around that. But in terms of what's next for McKeon Group, and the projects in the pipeline over 2020 and 2021, what's next for McKeon Group?
I suppose we have been very successful actually in a number of framework tenders of late. A lot of public framework tenders. So with the likes of the county councils and with the third level institutes. So thankfully, you know, a lot of them will have a lot of work. So we see that coming up. We're building houses in Malahide. We are, as I say, finishing off that medical device company there in Clonshock. And I suppose here works from a technology point of view. We're working with a lot of the large tech companies in Dublin City who are gung ho to plough ahead with all their projects, which has been great feedback to hear. Obviously, there may be some changes to office layouts, but the scale and scope of the projects remain the same. So we've plenty in the pipeline. As I say, we've a lot of projects that are supposedly postponed. But hopefully, as confidence returns into the market, we'll see them come back online.
Absolutely. And I note there that you talked about your grandfather establishing the company in 1950, which makes 2020 your 70th anniversary, and you're the third generation leading the charge there. So that's another massive achievement there.
Yeah. Yeah, so we hope to have celebrations later in the year.
Absolutely, and hopefully there will be plenty to celebrate across the industry also. So our thanks again, Tomás, for joining us just to talk about the Good2Go app, but also for making that available to the industry. So again, for anybody listening in that wants to learn more about that, it's good and the number 2Go, and you'll find details of that on McKeon Group website, which is mckeon.ie. So thanks again to Tomás McKeon, and Managing Director at McKeon Group. Thank you so much for joining us today. We need to take another quick break. Stay tuned.
93.9 Dublin South FM.
And welcome back to Property Matters on Dublin South FM with myself, Carol Tallon. You can contact us on Twitter at iPropertyRadio or email hello@iPropertyRadio.com. I'm delighted to be joined on the line now by Paddy Byrne, Managing Director of Xenon Fever Defence. So, Paddy, thank you so much for joining us today.
No problem, Carol. Thanks very much for having me on the show.
Delighted. Paddy, Xenon Fever Defence. What exactly is Fever Defence?
Fever Defence is a standalone fever screening solution that helps businesses to reopen again after the COVID-19 lockdown. So the idea of Fever Defence is that it's installed at the entrances of business premises and allows businesses to quickly and easily check the temperature of people who are entering their premises. So the Fever Defence device itself is a standalone solution. It comes as an 8-inch LCD display on top of a pedestal stand. Now, the device has both forward-facing temperature screening camera and facial detection camera, which allows it to quickly take a facial temperature of people entering the building. So it's designed really with ease of use and installation as its primary goal. And how it works is it detects when someone is in front of it and uses an audible instruction to ask them to step into the detection area, which is about 1 meter in front of the device. It then quickly takes a temperature scan of the facial area and gives a red or a green light indicator and an audible warning depending on if the person is in a normal range of temperature or has a potential fever temperature.
Okay, and is this sensor attached to the app?
Yes, correct. It's a standalone solution. So it looks almost like an iPad tablet with a temperature camera on top. Now that's mounted on top of a standalone pedestal stand, which can simply be plugged in at the entrances of people's premises. It just needs a normal electrical outlet and doesn't require internet connection for it to allow its fever screening functionality.
Okay, and does that plug into any other solutions, or can it tie in with software that a company might already be using to maybe manage or monitor staff?
At the moment, it's a completely standalone solution, and that's really for GDPR purposes. So it's an offline solution and doesn't require internet connection for its functionality. So at the moment, there are no integrations with other solutions.
Okay, and so tell me, what was Xenon doing prior to COVID-19?
Yeah, so Xenon has always been in the security and safety space. So we've worked on a variety of different products and projects around Ireland. mostly in the installation end of it, where we've done projects like Kilkee Castle, multiple different water treatment facilities around Ireland, and also a lot of commercial buildings around Dublin.
Okay, so do you have a team? You're based in County Carlow. Do you actually have a team working on innovation based in Carlow?
Correct, yeah. So I suppose early on, whenever it became apparent that the pandemic was going to be a big issue, about the middle of January, our team started working on different solutions to really help businesses to try reopen again as quickly as possible. And to protect their staff. So our team have had a number of sleepless nights since then and have been working really hard to get fever defence to where it is today. And thankfully, we're already protecting customers in a variety of different industries in Ireland and also in the UK and the US markets.
Wow. So your time then from, say, innovation or ideation right through to actually getting deployed on your first site, how long did that take?
We're only after deploying the first devices about 3 weeks ago. Now, as I said, our team have really been working around the clock to get it this far, and we're really happy with the results that we have.
Okay, and that's great. I mean, look, that's, over the past number of weeks on the show here, we've spoken to innovators who have really responded so quickly to the pandemic and have rolled out solutions that are required. And the speed at innovation, and not just innovation, but the speed of execution has been just unbelievable. So tell me, in terms of the industries that I know you're really at early stages of rolling out, which of course is understandable.
Yeah.
What industries are you targeting, or what industries are using the device already?
So we've currently have about 300 installations here in the UK and in the US. It's across a broad spectrum of industries. I suppose here locally, we're lucky to have great clients like Ballymore Group and Murphy Group in the construction space, Aramark in the facilities management space, amongst others in manufacturing, food processing, medical devices, retail and commercial. So we've been lucky to have a broad spectrum of customers so far. And I suppose it's really a different business trying to reopen as quickly as possible and try to get back to some sort of normality.
Yeah, absolutely. When we look at solutions, particularly for the construction industry, generally any devices that are used on site, they need to be robust. So how are you providing, say, can your device be used outdoors with electricity connection?
So unfortunately, none of the thermal imaging devices can be used outdoor because of accuracy. The devices using this technology need to be in an indoor environment to allow the accuracy of reading. Our device does accuracy of plus or minus 0.3 of a degree, and it has to be in an indoor wind-free environment to allow this. Now, we have a number of customers who in the construction space have been very innovative around this and have used shipping containers as a means of creating an indoor environment that staff can pass through on the way into their sites.
Yeah, that's a good idea. So, but for the device to work properly, say, for example, if you were using this inside a shipping container, does it need to be effectively sealed, or is 3 walls enough?
No, it would need to be.
Or does it need to be in an
indoor environment?
Sorry, go ahead.
An indoor environment with minimal wind is what is really required for to give an accurate reading.
Okay. And in terms of, now that you have this on construction sites, in terms of the feedback you're getting, first of all, are staff happy to use this, and site operatives, are they happy to use it? Yeah,
absolutely. The feedback we've been getting so far has been overwhelmingly good. I suppose being designed with ease of use in mind was important from the start with this device, and the red and green light stop-go system combined with the audible instructions really means that people just get it straight away and they intuitively react or interact with it. And I think it brings a lot of people comfort that they know that they're healthy and that the people who are on the sites and in the different building environments with them are also healthy. So it has definitely been positive from that regard.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, the sheer scale of rollout, 300 sites over the past 3 weeks across Ireland, the UK, the US, that's phenomenal. Like, how have you done that? Have you worked with partners in other jurisdictions?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've been lucky to get venture capital backing from a New York-based venture capital company, ATW Partners, and they've assisted both with financing and with partner companies in the US. So we're lucky to have some really good partners over there who are helping us scale the business out over there.
Okay, and that's really impressive, Paddy. But was that funding specifically for this solution? Because that just seems like such a quick time frame to design a solution, pitch it to VCs, get support, get money, build, execute, deploy. That seems to have happened in such a short space of time. Were you already pitching for investment prior to devising this particular solution?
Yeah, so I already had a relationship with this investment company from a previous startup company that I had called Box. Box was in the delivery space, but it's previously been sold to an investor in the States. Now, I suppose speed of innovation, and like you already alluded to, with the whole COVID-19 situation, has been everything. And there really has been great support from the guys at ATW, and understanding that it has quite a potential to help different businesses across the States, and that's where the investment came from.
Yeah, and even having the network of partners to distribute your solution. So in terms of deployment on site, and I suppose I'm asking this question now not for the construction companies who might actually want to deploy this on site, but for many of the prop tech innovators who are at the moment maybe designing solutions, or who have designed solutions and are struggling in terms of the rollout. So in terms of actually deploying on site, can you send the device, or does it need to be installed?
No, it's been designed so that it can be packaged and sent to sites. And really, we've put a lot of attention into making it as easy to install and to start as possible. So what we say is, if you have 15 minutes and a screwdriver, you can put it together. We've made a number of different installation and assembly videos just to really help people understand how it's put together. And most of our customers haven't had an issue with that so far.
Okay, and then I suppose from the company point of view, have you been able to put in place any protections in terms of patents, given the short time frame?
We haven't patented the idea. We have, however, got trademarks around our branding, and that's been the extent of it.
Okay, it's a really impressive achievement, Paddy. What size is the team there working in Carlow?
We have a 20-person team here working in Carlow, and we're now working with various different specialists in different areas, in logistics and in operations, to help build it out in the US market as well.
Okay, and what are you working on in terms of? I understand that there's been a huge rush to perfect fever defence and to get that rolled out. But in terms of the longer term plans for the company, what are you working towards next? Are you seeing the pandemic as maybe opening up opportunities for more ongoing as opposed to more immediate solutions being required?
Well, I suppose with the actual fever defence product itself, we do hope to get past the pandemic, and the device itself is being designed in a way that will allow future applications to be added to it, around the access control, employee check-in, and possibly remote customer terminal type devices. So we do certainly see a future for this device post pandemic as well. In terms of in general, the pandemic, it has been brutal across the world, but It has, however, also created an unbelievable amount of innovation. And every week we are having Zoom calls with companies in the States that 3 months ago it would have been really, really difficult to start conversations with these people. And now, because of the almost ubiquity of tools like Zoom and other video sharing platforms, we've had companies from Silicon Valley through to Dubai. And it's, in a way, it's brilliant to be able to think that you can do business on an international scale from Carlow here in Ireland.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, thank you so much for being with us, Paddy, and for taking us through the solution. Once again, it's a massive achievement by your team to respond so quickly, to design something that can be deployed so quickly and that can be so effective for employers. So just, I suppose, a final note for anybody, particularly from the planning, construction and property industries, who might need to deploy this, where is this information available?
Yeah, we can be found at the web address www.fiberdefense.com. And there's lots of information on our website about the address, and by all means feel free to get in touch with us, and our team will be more than happy to help try solve their particular issues.
Very good. Okay, we leave it there for now. That was Paddy Byrne, Managing Director of Xenon Fibre Defence, based in Carlow, and now rolled out over the past 3 weeks across 300 plus sites in Ireland, the UK and the US, which is a massive achievement. So well done to all the team there. We need to take another short break and we'll be back shortly. Stay tuned.
93.9 Dublin South FM.
Welcome back to Property Matters on Dublin South FM with myself, Carol Tallon. We are, of course, recording from home as the radio station operates remotely in full compliance with government guidelines. So please bear with us over any sound quality issues while we record remotely. So I'm now joined on the line by Garrett Flower, CEO of parkoffice.io. Garrett, you're very welcome.
Thanks for having me.
And so tell me, Garrett, parkoffice.io, what is Park Office?
So Park Office started about 1.5 years ago when we rolled out the product. Essentially, it's an allocation system for parking spaces for offices. So what we found was that a lot of office space on a daily basis goes empty. And this is to the frustration of, other people who are in the company. Essentially, what you'll see when you look out the window into the car park, you'll see between 20 and 50% of the spaces lie empty on a daily basis. And this is solely because there is no clever way until now of managing that space and releasing the space, if you have a space, to someone else who may be in need of a space. So Park Office does that through its software. And we set up and work with some of the leading companies around the world, like Indeed and CBRE, for example. And we set companies up very quickly within 3 hours, and then they can go away and reduce the frustration of their drivers and improve employee morale and efficiency, etc. So very simple product, very clever solution.
Okay, well, look, that's exactly what we like to hear. But in terms of the principle of this is very well established, say, in terms of IoT sensors being used in offices to monitor desk space and use, so that they can have a more flexible application and know in real time about availability, so there's less waste. So it absolutely makes sense to be doing this with our car parks as well. But I suppose I'm personally just not as familiar with the problem around car parking within companies and within organizations. So does this problem arise where there's designated spaces?
It can arise in two ways. So right now around the world, if you look at the US alone, there's the equal amount of squared footage of offices as there is parking. So when you look at how you manage parking currently in the traditional sense, there's two ways of doing it. One is first come, first serve. So it's like everyone can drive in, and if you get lucky and you get a space, that's great, you got it. But whoever ends up coming after you is kind of stuck. They don't have a space. Where did they go? So that's one traditional model. And then the second model is you get allocated spaces. So normally it's the senior management who get allocated a space in an area. And then if you're, maybe a junior in the company, you don't get a space. And that really can cause a lot of frustration internally in the company in both scenarios. So
yeah, absolutely.
So where the idea actually stemmed, Carol, was we were tasked with finding spaces for a large pharmaceutical company, and when we went in to meet them, they actually had tasked us to find 50 spaces in the area, and we had, when I drove in, there was actually 50 spaces in their car park empty. So they're looking to pay us all of this money to find space, and they have an empty car park. And what happened in their scenario was that they had allocated spaces to their senior management, but of course they were out at meetings, out sick, or on holidays. So that space was left to waste every single day. And now this is, in those two traditional senses, this is all across the world. So when we roll out our solution, we deal with both of those traditional scenarios, and we give them an effective, seamless solution to remove that. So in the first come, first serve scenario, what we do is we can create a system where first you can see the occupancy live. So if you're getting up in the morning and you're driving in your normal commute, you can actually see the live occupancy as it goes up in the office at that time. And some companies have more than one car park. So you might see that car park A, which is right beside the office, is now getting really full. So I'm going to go to car park B. And and that actually saves an enormous amount of time that is normally wasted on a daily basis. You'd be surprised how some of the biggest companies in the world, they'll have thousands of employees driving in on a daily basis. And that saved 10 minutes for a couple of hundred employees every day adds up. So you can...
Yeah, no, look, that absolutely makes sense. And I suppose I'm thinking of, particularly outside of just one company's parking, business parks in particular, whenever I go to East Point, it almost feels like a separate appointment to get my parking first. It's quite frustrating. Yeah. So something like that would really be a benefit. And I suppose, we've seen maybe lower tech solutions rolled out in a simpler way in shopping centre car parks, where sensors alert people by way of lights, not using an app, but just very simple things to direct people to site or to vacant spaces. But how does your technology actually work?
Yeah, so that's a perfect example. Just think about when you used to drive to the shopping centre and how frustrating it was not to know where the space was. And that simple little light, how much less stress you have in your life because of that. So our solution is a souped up version of that. So essentially, like for the occupancy, we can see where the space is at live in real time through your app. So when you're driving, it will notify you which ones are filling up fast. It could say car park A is now 90% full, go to car park B and give you a link to that. It could also allocate you a space. So in some companies, people want to continue to be allocated their spaces. So what it does is it allows you with one tap to confirm that you are taking the space on that day, or release the space in one tap. So that allows you to then, if you know that you're out, you don't normally come in on Fridays, you release that space to someone else in the company, into the pool for the company to use. Then you can arrange that system so that it can go in either priority. So you might have a current organizational structure, senior level down, and you can give them priority based on their status in the company. Or you could give priority, say, people with disability, or who live very far away, or who are pregnant at the moment, etc. So humanizing the policy a little bit more and reducing that friction. Or you could make it flat. So you could do it completely fair, where it's everybody gets allocated through our algorithm, allocation algorithm, which we actually nicknamed Newton. And it takes all the complexity away. So the company can just put in the fair algorithm for Newton, and it will spit out who gets parking and on what day. So you might get parking 2 times this week, but it'll actually lower you down in the algorithm for next week because you've already got it more than some others this week.
Okay. Yeah, and that sounds like a great solution. I feel like there's maybe a story behind the naming of Newton. Who came up with that?
It's an interesting one. He came up with the philosophy of motion, and it became apparent as we were trying to describe the solution how we didn't want to get into the complexity, because actually our job is to remove the complexity for our customers. So giving it the name of Newton actually reduces the need for us to describe the complexity that's built within the solution. And it spits out exactly what they want. They want the solution. People want the solution. They don't want to waste their time figuring out parking. They want to get to the meeting. I actually had a great conversation with one of the biggest tech CEOs in the world, and he said, how valuable that 10 minutes is when you're not going to make it late to your board meeting, and how beautiful it is to get that 10 minutes and not be late for your board meeting. So I think this is a problem that's been there, and it's a solution to that problem, which is very new.
Yeah, and I suppose if you think about it, designated parking in the first place on a hierarchical basis was so that the most important people spent the least amount of time on this problem.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the whole concept behind it. But I suppose like all startups and like all businesses, there has had to be an element of reimagining the product in light of the pandemic and to adjust to kind of a changed workplace. So I understand you've actually adapted the solution to help companies, I suppose, minimize risk as their employees look about returning to work, whichever phase of the recovery that they'll be returning under.
So when everything happened, obviously there was an immediate pause on everything across every industry, and everyone took a breath and tried to figure out what was going on and how far this would go. And look, we saw an immediate questioning of, okay, well, nobody's driving, what's going to happen? And actually, that lasted for about 2 weeks. And then we started talking to the companies that we were working with and saying, what will the future look like, and started to figure that out. And I think we started discussing that earlier than most. And what we found was that it's going to look like a staged rollout. So a stage come back to the offices, what would be necessary for companies to do that in a safe and effective way. And so we actually got a lot of ideas from our clients, from our customers, who are saying, we want to be able to check in with our customer or with our employees on a daily basis to see how they're doing, to see how they're feeling. Are they feeling ill? Because a lot of people are touting temperature checks at the front door and things like that. But actually, that's nearly too late if you think about it. You're driving into the office and you're arriving at the door, and can you imagine, the fear of the sensor going off and telling you've got a high temperature and other people looking at you. The social fear of that alone is daunting for most. So this is mostly an honor-based system that we set up for our customers, where essentially they could send, we know when you've booked in to go to work. So it sends you a message an hour before you're going to work and saying, how are you feeling today? Do you feel like you have a temperature? Have you been in contact with anyone suspicious that you might be suspicious that you might have it? And it will then, if you respond yes or no to those questions, if you respond yes, then it'll just send a message saying, no problem. HR will be in touch with you shortly to discuss. And that does it in a very humane way, which is not, alerting everybody on campus that someone arrived today and had the COVID-19. And it just does it on an honor-based system. And we found that a lot of clients are very interested in more than that. We're also allocating desks along with the parking spaces now as well. So we offer these solutions free of charge as our way to help. Myself and my co-founder, Dan, who's our CTO, we tried to figure out ways in which we can help. And obviously, look, we're not scientists. We're not able to, and we're not a huge company, so we're not able to do more than that. But it's really about trying to help with what we have, and that was a way for us to quite quickly listen to our customers and what they need, and then develop something using our skills, which is in technology, to create a common sense way to help.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, in terms of Park Office, you're only about 18 months established, so there's been quite good market traction so far, even prior to the pandemic.
Yeah, February was our best month ever. We've been fortunate that this solution solves a real problem, and I think that's the fact and why we've been growing quite quickly. It's not a nice to have solution; it's actually solving a problem. And our customers have been great referrals for us, and referring us to more business. One of the benefits with having a solution that solves a problem, it means that we're actually able to quite quickly get engagement with some of the largest companies in the world. And if you looked at our client list, we have 6 Fortune 500s. Already established, and that's just in the last 18 months, and realistically that's more like the last 12 months, because the first 6 months, as you know yourself, is all about teasing it out, listening to customers, building on top of that, etc. and so on. But we've been growing remarkably quickly, and we're seeing a lot of traction across the world, from LA to New Zealand. We now have customers, which is really exciting for the team. And I'm fortunate enough and in the lucky position that I'm surrounded by very, very intelligent people who are hardworking and nonstop, and it makes my job easier.
Well, look, that's the power of the team, and if you can get that right at startup stage, all things are possible. But in terms of market traction over the past 18 months, or even 12, as you suggest there, that's been phenomenal by any standards. And sometimes actually, in terms of international clients, like one of the ones like you've mentioned there, they can actually become a route to export, which is so important, or a route into international markets, and that's just so important for Irish startups, particularly given the geographical limitations of a country this size. It's a really important one. So what's next for Park Office?
I think you're completely right with that comment. I think we're very much focused on how we can expand outside of the island of Ireland. We're looking at working with our treasured partners like CBRE, and getting introductions into their offices globally. Right now we're managing their parking in Dublin. This morning we were talking to their offices in Spain, and we're looking at how we can expand that, not just in those countries, but into countries around the world. They're a perfect example of a partner that can help us expand our reach. And that's the beauty of software as well, is that we can set up a client in less than 3 hours. So, when you think about how it can scale across the world, it's really, really amazing. The ability for exponential growth. I would say that we're in terms of our vision and targets, we're looking to be the number one player in this space in the next 4 years, and really go after a target. We have a milestone internally in the company of being in 100 plus countries by the end of 2024, and I think that's an exciting thing for a company where the CEO is currently based in his house in Longford.
Look, geography, the great thing about prop tech or technology in general is geography doesn't have to be a limitation at all, and it's a really important one for us, particularly again in Ireland, being an island. There are limitations there in terms of market size. So, but in a way, actually, one thing I found through our experience with PropTech Ireland is that it actually makes Irish startups focused on export at a much earlier stage than our UK or other counterparts might, and I think that's an inherent strength, that it's something that Irish startups tend to have, and it's a really strong one. So it sounds like a bold ambition and some pretty big goals there. It'll be exciting to watch Park.io as you progress to meet those. Garrett, thank you so much for joining us today, and best of luck to your team as you go forward with those to try meet those bold targets. That was Garrett Flower, CEO of ParkOffice.io. Thank you so much for joining us today. That's it from us today on Property Matters, the show where property matters. You can get in touch by emailing hello@ipropertyradio.com or on Twitter @ipropertyradio. Also, my thanks to Peter Rice on sound and show producer Katie Tallon of Hear Me Roar Media. We're back at the same time next week. From myself, Carol Tallon, and all the team here, stay safe.